want to realize truth. You want to realize reality.
And does that fall within the realm of the scientific or the spiritual? When you speak of the real and you speak of a realization, does that fall, which category does that fall into? Because you seem to speak a lot in scientific terms and then you wade into the spiritual realm without really calling it spiritual. I'm a bit confused in that you seem to be using scientific terminology to describe something that crosses over into what we would refer to as the spiritual. When you use the word realization, which is it, and how do you differentiate the two?
Actually, you should not differentiate between scientific and spiritual as such. Science comes from the root word scientia, which means to know, knowledge, to know. And science is a means to know something. Spirituality is an aspect of what we call religion. Not the ritualistic religion, but the religion that was originally there, which comes from the root word religare, and it means linking back to what? Linking back to truth, the reality. Now that we are so deluded and in total illusion, linking back to reality of what we are and what we are part of and why we are here and what's our purpose.
But a few moments ago you said, don't make the mistake of thinking that knowledge can be a realization.
Yes.
And yet you're saying don't differentiate between the scientific
Yes.
and the spiritual. To
That's
me
an
that
excellent
seems
point.
like a contradiction in terms.
Yes, that's an excellent point. There is no contradiction there, however. What I am saying now is that science was originally a quest for truth, a quest for the knowledge of truth. The word knowledge applied there in science refers to once we have a realization of what reality is, we want to explain it to others. So we convert it into information using linguistic structures. So the quest begins with spiritual desires, with spiritual seeking, and then you discover in your realization something that you cannot even express. But then you try to make sense of it. For instance, a classic example is that of Newton having discovered gravity when the so-called apple fell on his head. Right? Now, apples used to fall always from trees. Everything always fell down. How come only a few hundred years ago a guy named Newton for the first time realized that things fall down? That's realization. People always knew things fall down. For the first time, Newton is the guy who realized something falls down. The difference being this: when you know something, you are no longer questioning what really is happening there. To realize means light goes on. And you go, why? What is it? How? Newton realized things fall. And he realized, he didn't know why. So in the process, he had to go into the mode of realization, from where came his insight into the laws we know as Newton's laws of gravity. Right?
So knowledge may or may not.
So that is science.
Okay.
So the knowledge that rose from the quest to know reality. And that was science. Spirituality is exactly the same thing. You have a quest to know reality, to be one with reality, to be one with that which you think is of the other realm. And here is a very important point, Millie. And this is what I'm pointing to when I discern between the mind dimension and real dimension. All throughout history, as long as we have had this idea of spirituality, people have thought that the spiritual world is some world that is beyond the real world, that is experienced. Now see the illusion? They think they experience the real world, therefore the spirit world must be something beyond the real world. Now what is the problem here is that they don't experience the real world. They experience a virtual reality world in the mind dimension. So where is the spirit then? The spirit is the real world, which is not experienced. So they were in some way right, that the spirit world is something beyond their experience. But where they were wrong is they thought what they experience is the real world. So they thought spirituality is about going beyond the real world you experience into the world of the heavens, the divine, something beyond the realm in which we exist. And the fact is, the spirit world is the real world in which we really exist. The real body, the real self, is the spirit. All real things are spirits. Spirit being the fundamental stuff configured in a certain form, emanating out of the ground of creation, the unified field. It emanates from there and dissipates back into it upon its death. And all the time it keeps changing and evolving. In other words, the spirit, which is the fundamental stuff that emanates